Hello guys, welcome to our channel SpringBoot Tutorials. So today we will cover in our channel Spring Overview in this video. So we can start the SpringBoot tutorial. Yeah. So today's topic, what is the agenda of today's video? So there is a specific topic we can consider like what is a Spring Boot, why should we use Spring Boot framework, advantage of Spring Boot, limitations of Spring Boot, goals of Spring Boot, and what is the requirement of Spring Boot features, how to create Spring Boot application using Maven, what is the Spring Boot annotations. So Spring MVC and REST annotations. What is the Spring Boot dependency management? What are the Spring Boot starters? What is the Spring Boot actuators? What is Thymeleaf? How to use Thymeleaf? How to connect Spring Boot to the database using JPA? And what is the @REST controller annotation in Spring Boot? And what is the @request mapping annotation in Spring Boot? How to create Spring Boot application using Spring Starter Project Wizard? Or what is the difference between Spring and Spring Boot? So we can start what is the Spring Boot. Spring Boot is a project that is built on top of the Spring framework. It provides an easier and faster way to set up the configurations and run both and simple and web-based applications. It is a Spring module that provides the rapid application development features to the Spring framework. It is used to create standalone Spring-based application that you can just run because it needs minimal Spring configuration. In short, Spring Boot is the combination of Spring framework embedded server. In Spring Boot, there is no requirement of XML configurations. Deployment descriptor. It is used to convention our configuration software design diagram that makes and decrease effort of the developers. So we can use Spring STS, IDE or Spring Initials to develop the Spring Boot Java applications like Spring Framework plus embedded HTTP server like Tomcat and Jetty and execute the XML bean configuration or configurations is equals to the Spring Boot. Why should we use Spring Boot framework? We should use Spring Boot framework because the deployment dependency injection approach is used in Spring Boot, and it contains powerful database transaction management capabilities. It simplifies integration with other Java framework like JPA, Hibernate, ORM, Struct, etc. It reduces the cost and development time of the applications. Along with the Spring Boot framework, many other Spring sister projects help to build application address modern business name. There are following Spring sister projects are as follow. Spring Data. It simplifies the data access from the relation NoSQL database. Spring Batch. It provides powerful batch processing. Spring Security. It is security framework that provides the robust security to the applications. Spring Social. It supports integration with social networking like LinkedIn. Spring Integration. It is an implementation of an enterprise integration pattern, facilitate integration with other enterprise applications using lightweight messaging and declarative adapters. What is the advantage of Spring Boot? It creates standalone Spring application that can be starting using Java jar. It tests web application easier with the help of different embedded HTTP servers such as Tomcat, Jetty, etc. We don't need to deploy WAV files. It provides open-ended starter form to the simplify our Maven configuration. It provides production ready features such as matrix health check and externalized configurations. There are no requirement of XML configuration. It offers CLI tool developing and testing the Spring Boot application. It offers a number of plugins. It also minimizes writing multiple boilerplate codes like the code that has to be included many places with the little or no alteration XML configuration and annotations. It increases the productivity and reduces the development time. What is the limitation of Spring Boot? Spring Boot can use dependencies that are not going to be used to application. There are dependencies increase the size of applications. As you can see here is the picture. Okay, so what is the goal of the Spring Boot? The main goal of the Spring Boot to reduce the development unit test and reduce test time, provide open development approach, avoid definition, more annotation configuration, avoid writing loads of import statement, avoid XML configuration. By providing or avoiding the above point, Spring Boot framework reduce the development time, developer effort, and increase productivity. So we can go to the next slide. Was requirement of Spring Boot to create Spring Boot application. They are following requested like is required. Like in this tutorial, we use Spring Boot tools, so STS IDE, Java 1.8, Maven 3.0, Spring Boot Framework 5.0, build snapshot. So an IDE Spring tools like Spring Tool Suite is recommended. What is the feature of Spring Boot? Web development, Spring applications, application event listeners, admin features, externalized configuration, property files, via YML support, type, safe configuration, logging, and अपना security. So first is web application. What is the web development? It is well suited Spring module for web application development. We can easily create self-contained HTTP application that use embedded server like Tomcat JPA. We can use the Spring Boot startup web module to start and run the application quickly. Spring application. The Spring application is the class that provides the convenient way to bootstrap Spring application. It can be started from the main method and we can call the application just by calling a static run method. Application event and listener. Spring Boot uses event to handle the variety of tasks. It allows us to create the factory file that is used to add the listener. We can refer it using the application listener key. Always create factories files like meta.inf folder. Suppose for example meta.inf slash spring.factories. So there is admin support also. Spring Boot provides the facility to enable admin related feature for the application. It is used to access and manage application remotely. So we can enable in the Spring Boot application by using spring.applications.admin.enable property. So we just need to enable the property in property file. Externalize configuration. Spring Boot allows to externalize our configuration so that we can work with the same application with different environment. The application use YML support files to externalize the configuration. Spring Boot provides a set of application properties so we can use the property file in our project. And the property file is used to set properties like server port 8082, many other. It helps to organize application properties. YML support. It provides a convenient way to specify the hierarchical configurations. It is the superset of JSON. The Spring Boot application class automatically supports YML. It is an alternative property file. Type safe configuration. The strong type safe configuration provided to govern and validate the configuration of the application. Application configuration always crucial task which should be type safe. We can use annotation provided by the library. Logging. Spring Boot use common logging for all internal logging dependencies are managed by default. We should not change logging dependencies. No customization is needed. Security. Spring Boot application has Spring basis web application, so it's secure by default by using authentication on all HTTP endpoints. So a rich set of endpoints is available to develop a secure Spring Boot application. So that is the feature of Spring Boot. And how to create a Spring Boot application using Maven. There are multiple approaches to create a Spring Boot project. We can use any different approach to create application. Spring Maven project, Spring Starter project wizard, Spring Initializer, Spring Boot CLI. So there is a various way we can use. What is the Spring Boot annotations? The @rest controller is the stereotype annotation. We can add @controller, response body and annotation in the class. So we need to import the Allspring framework web bind annotation package in a file in order to implement it. Second is @required. It applies to bean setter method. It indicates that annotated bean must be populated the configuration time, the required property. Exit throw an exception. Bean is less exception. Third is @autovar. Spring provide annotation based on auto wiring provide at the rate auto wire annotation. It is used to auto wire Spring being a certain method. Instance variable constructor when we use auto wire annotations, the Spring container auto wires the bean by matching data type. At the rate configuration, it is the class level annotation. The class annotate with at the rate configuration used by Spring container as source of bean definition. At the rate component stamp, it is used when we want to scan package for the bean. It is used the annotation at the rate configuration. We can use specify base package to scan Spring component. So there is another annotation at the root B. It method level annotation. It alternate XML bean tag. It is a method to produce the bean by manage the Spring container. At the rate component, it is the class level annotations. It is used to mark Java class as a bean, and Java class annotation with at the rate component is the found during the class part. So Spring Framework pick it up and configure it application context as Spring Bean. So got it? So that is the at the rate controller. The at the rate controller is the class level annotation and it is specializations of at the rate component. It marks as a class web request handler and it is often used to serve web pages. So by default that can be returned the string that indicate which route to redirect. So it is mostly used to at the rate request mapping annotations. At the rate service, it is also used at class level. It tells the Spring that class contains the business logic. At the rate repository. Annotation is used class level annotations and the repository DAO data access object that access the database directly and repository does all operation related to the database. So what is the Spring Boot annotations? At the rate enable auto configuration, it auto configure bean that is present the class path and configure is to run the method and use of the annotation is use the Spring Boot 1.2.2 release because developer provided alternative of the annotation. At the rate Spring Boot application. This at the rate Spring Boot application is combination of three annotations like at the rate enable auto configuration, at the rate component scan, and at the rate configurations. What is different between a Spring MVC and REST annotation? At the rate request mapping, it is used to map the web request has many optional elements like consumer headers, method name, parent path, produce, and values. So we use it and the class as well as methods. So what my point? And another is the get mapping is map the like HTTP get request on the specific handler method. So it is used to create a web service endpoints. That patch is used to instead using at the request mapping. So methods equals to request mapping dot get. So we can also use that way. So next point is at the post mapping. So it maps the HTTP post request on specific handler method. So it can be used like create web services endpoint that creates it used to instead of using we can use at the rate request mapping annotations, bracket open method equals to request mapping dot post and bracket close. Next one is at the rate put mapping. It maps HTTP put request on the specific handler method. It is used to create like web service endpoint that creates or updates. So it is introduced, we can, as you can see at the request mapping, open bracket method equals to request method dot put and close method bracket. Another one is at the rate response body. So it binds the method, return the value of response body. So it tells the Spring Boot framework to serialize and return an object into the JSON and XML format. So what is the at the rate path variable annotations? So it is used to extract the value of the URI. It most suitable as RESTful web service. Whereas URLs contain a path variable, we can define multiple path variable like at the rate path variable in the method. So next annotation is the at the rate request param. It is used to extract the query parameter from the URL. It is also known as query parameter. So it is more suitable for web applications. So it can be specified the default value of the query parameter is not present in the URL. So that pretty much. So another one is at the rate request header. So it is used to get the detail about HTTP request header. So we use to annotation as the meta parameters, the optional element of the annotation like name required and value and default value. So for each detail of the header, we should specify the separate annotation so we can use it multiple times in the methods. Another one is at the rate rest controller. It can be considered as a combination of at the rate controller and at the rate response body annotations. So at the rate rest controller is itself annotation, and at the rate response body annotations. It eliminates the need of annotating each method with at the rate response body. Next one is at the rate request attribute. It binds the method parameters and request attribute. It provides the convenient access of the request attribute from the controller method. With the help of request attribute annotation, we can access the object that populated on the server side. Yeah, that's a pretty much. And we can go to next annotations. So next annotation is at the rate delete mapping. So it mapped the HTTP delete request on specific handle method. It is used to create web service endpoint that deletes the resources. It is used to instead of using at the rate request mapping method is equals to request method dot delete. Another one is at the rate patch mapping. It did map HTTP patch request specific handler method. It is used instead of using at the rate request mapping open bracket method request mapping dot patch. Another one is at the rate request body. It is used to bind HTTP request with the object method parameter. Internally, it is used to attribute HTTP message converter to convert the body of the request when we annotate the method parameter with at the rate request body. The Spring framework bind the incoming HTTP request body to the parameter. What is the Spring Boot dependency management? Spring Boot manages dependency and configuration automatically. You don't need to specify version of that dependencies. Spring Boot upgrade all dependency automatically when you upgrade the Spring Boot. What is the Spring Boot starter? Starter are the set of convenient dependency descriptor which we can include in our applications. Spring Boot provides the built-in starter which we can make to deployment easier and rapid. For example, if we want to get started using Spring and JPA for the database access, just include a Spring Boot starter data JPA dependency in your project. So, what is the activator? Spring Boot activator. Spring Boot provides the activator to monitoring and managing our application. So, activator is tool which have HTTP endpoints. When application is pushed to production, you can choose to manage monitor your application using HTTP endpoints. What is the Thymeleaf? It is a server-side template engine for the web applications. Its main goal is to bring elegant, natural template to your web application. It can be integrated with Spring Application Framework and ideal from the HTML5 Java web applications. So next topic is that how to use Thymeleaf. In order to use Thymeleaf, we must write in a POM file like dependency, group ID, and artifact ID and dependency clause. As you can see that in group ID we can mention organize Spring Framework boot and artifact ID Spring Boot starter Thymeleaf. How to connect Spring Boot to the database using JPA. Spring Boot provides Spring Boot starter data JPA starter to connect Spring application with relational database efficiently. You can use it into project POM file like project object model file. How to connect Spring Boot application to database using JDBC. Spring Boot provides starter and library to connecting our application with JDBC. Here we are creating application which connect with MySQL database. It includes the following steps like create step, set up JDBC with Spring Boot. So how to connect Spring Boot application to the database using JDBC. So we can say that Spring Boot provides Strata and the libraries for connecting to our application with JDBC. And we can creating the application which connect with MySQL database. It can include following steps. You can create JDBC and create Spring Boot. So what is the at the rate rest controller annotation in Spring Boot? At the rate rest controller stereotype annotation. It adds at the rate controller at the rate response body annotation to the class. We need to import organization spring framework .web.bind annotation package in our file in coder to implement it. Next one is what is the at the rate request mapping annotation in Spring Boot. So there is a like request mapping annotation is used to provide routing information that it can be tell the Spring any HTTP request should be mapped. So corresponding method we need to import like organization Spring Framework web application package in our file. Yeah, that's pretty much. So how to create a Spring Boot application using Spring starter project which are there's no one more way to create a Spring Boot project is STS Spring Tool Suite creating project by using ID is always convenient way. So follow the following steps like in order to create a Spring Boot application by using wizard. So that's pretty much in the slides. Next one is what is the difference between Spring versus like Spring Boot. Spring is the web application framework based on Java. It provides tool and library to create complete customized web applications. Whereas Spring Boot is a Spring module that is used to create a Spring application project that can be just run. So thank you. Thanks for listen my video.